Okay, the next question that I've been asked relates to school issues. How do you find an appropriate school for a child, and how do you work on mainstreaming and including kids with autism in regular education programs? And so I'm primarily, familiar with the program utilized in the United States that is directed by the federal government. And basically, in order to be eligible for special services, an individual has to qualify under autistic-like behaviors. And so the criteria that school psychologists and school teams use to determine eligibility has a wide range of overlap with the DSM-IV diagnostic criteria that I spoke with you about earlier. Once a child has been assessed by an IEP special education team at his or her local school and their eligibility is determined, then parents are faced with the prospect of determining what is the best program, what services does the child need, what goals need to be established for that child's appropriate public education, and what is the best classroom or school environment in order to implement that program. Now, more and more, there is a tendency to want to mainstream children with autism so that they have exposure to typical peers so that they can begin to acquire skills and have the modeling of the social skills that they don't necessarily acquire spontaneously and independently. One of the things that's very beneficial about that, not only for the children with autism, but for all children, is that we are exposing children in the community to individuals with special needs and who function differently than themselves. If you begin to inculcate this respect for individual differences at an early age, and children are going to school together and have an integrated social and educational experience, you can see how ultimately this training, as children move along their educational experience, begins to create a community that is more accepting of others who are different. Now, I personally believe that full stream inclusionary education is not right for all children. In order to benefit from the full benefits of an inclusionary educational experience, you have to have a child who is in a comprehensible learning environment. For a child who has extreme language delays and to put them in a language-based classroom where there's so much talk going on, you do them a disservice to ask them to meaningfully operate and acquire new information in a manner that they lack the skills for. So basically, you need to be sure that the program matches a child's particular needs, and you need to understand that just because a child may require additional special education support early in life doesn't mean that they won't have opportunities to be fully included in mainstream as they grow their skills. A lot of children also have programs that integrate both special education programming along with mainstream experiences, and it's vital for parents to recognize that social learning occurs not just at school but in the community. So involving children with disability in community-based programs with adequate support is also a way to work on social integration. Now, in relation to the question of how do you increase peer acceptance of autistic behavior for typically developing children, that's the responsibility of professionals and adults. What that basically involves is going into a classroom and not only teaching tolerance and respect for diversity, but helping children understand that all of us learn and behave differently. It teaches children how to ignore inappropriate behaviors, how to support positive pro-social behavior. It teaches children how to help others who lack skills that they acquire easily. It involves, creating playground programs so typical children are playing with children who have special needs. It requires a full integration, not just around educational issues. And another question that comes up is how do you determine what's the appropriate grade placement for a child who has autism? First and foremost, I really want you to understand, for most kids with autism, academic growth is secondary to social, emotional, and adaptive behavior growth. I have had the opportunity over many years to see individuals who graduate from both college and graduate school, but who lack the social and adaptive behavior to allow them to then go out into the community and use these skills effectively. When you have a high-functioning autistic child who has a great deal of academic skills, a lot of people are prone to focus on that academic prowess rather than really focus on the child's social learning disabilities and their lack of social cognition. So when it comes to education, it's vital that everybody understand that we're looking at a well-rounded education that doesn't necessarily start with academics. If you don't develop social skills, you don't get to use your wonderful intellect. So, as people might recognize, most kids with autism who are able to participate, in regular educational experiences may be very smart, but they are social emotionally immature. So many parents come to the question of, should I be placing my child in the classroom with other children of a similar chronological age? Well, for young children, very often, I really believe one of the best gifts you can give them is the gift of time. So when I have a young child who is getting ready to transition from preschool to kindergarten, unless they really have a broad range of skills that's going to allow them to adaptively function in kindergarten, some of those children I keep for another year in a pre-K program and allow them to have another year of growth and development. When you're looking for classroom placement and determination of grade level, do not focus just on the ability to do the work. You have to focus on organizational skills, motivation, how the child's going to get along with others, whether the child can adapt appropriately to a classroom environment. So we're really looking at the social emotional underpinnings of a child to learn rather than their academic readiness. Now obviously you aren't going to put a child in an academic environment that is over his or her head, but I would suggest that the first thing you need to look at is their social emotional capacity to participate with a group of children in a sense of community as they all learn together.